Folks, today I thought I'd talk a little bit about training by heart rate as it relates to running. Now, I have a heart rate monitor. I've worn a heart rate monitor for, 25 years, a long, long time. I do not personally train with a heart rate monitor. By that, I don't train by the training zones, but I'm paying attention to my heart rate. There's nothing wrong with doing heart rate training, so this might sound a little bit negative against that, especially when I say I don't do that, but you can certainly train by heart rate. But there's things that you need to know, do, and consider if you're going to be training by heart rate. Now, I'm going to try and remember at the end of this video to link back to a video I did just a few weeks before this one, talking about knowing your max heart rate, the wrist heart rate versus the chest straps. A little cheat for you, the chest straps are way better than the wrist when it comes to the actual exercise. So hopefully I remember to link by that. If I don't, you can look back chronologically and see where that is. So training with heart rate. So you need to know your max heart rate. I talk about that in the other video. If you don't know your max heart rate, and I'll tell you the formulas are never right, you're not going to be able to get the right zones. So you need to know your heart rate zones. Obviously, that's related to your max heart rate. And there's a few other considerations that you want to have as well when you're doing the heart rate training. So first of all, of the other things, realize there are some things that are going to impact your heart rate, such as sleep, caffeine, and things like that, that might make your heart rate generally a little bit higher than it would normally be. Doesn't mean that you're overextending in the workout. It just means that heart rate, like everything, there is no perfect method to train. There are some things that can affect your heart rate that don't really have anything to do with the effort that you're putting out there. Generally, though, those aren't going to be an issue, but they can. And it's just something to be aware of in case you go, gee, what was abnormal today? Well, maybe it was that cup of coffee or the Red Bull you had that morning or whatever. But probably the biggest thing to consider with heart rate is that heart rate is a lagging indicator, meaning depending upon how fit you are, depending upon the conditions, depending upon your course, it's going to take a while generally for your heart rate to be telling you the right story. And you need to know what that is for you on any given workout and how it works in general, or you can find out that it's going to be very difficult to train by heart rate. So I'm going to give you a couple examples from my own training. So this was a steady run that I did a few weeks ago at an 8-minute pace the entire time and pretty close to 8 minutes every single mile. I would expect my heart rate to be in the low 140s or so for that type of a pace. You can see I drew an arrow up there. It's maybe difficult to see, but that red line up until the arrow is kind of at an angle upwards because I hadn't been exercising yet. In this particular case, it took about 8 minutes before my heart rate actually got into the low 140s. So why is that important? Well, if I was training by heart rate, and if my goal for this workout was say, well, I want my heart rate to be between, say, 140 and 145, what would happen if I tried to do that in the first 8 minutes, I would have been running way too fast to kind of get my heart rate. Oh, my heart rate's only 130. That's too low. I've got to go faster. And then all of a sudden I'd find out I overshot where I wanted because heart rate was lagging. Then you try and slow down and you do a lot of seesawing back and forth to get that. So just be aware that your heart rate lags a little bit. And if you're doing a steady run, it might take you a while before you get into that zone. Does it take 8 minutes? Depends upon you, depends upon the conditions, depends upon the course, a lot of things. But you need to take that in consideration if you use heart rate. There's also some times where your heart rate might not get into the zone at all. So this is another example from me. I was doing 5 by 1 mile at about a 7-minute pace. Now, if you see the blue arrow in this time, it's kind of hard to see, but it's pointing at 150. And if you look at those little heart rates in the middle, I tried to put a line on there to kind of show you that every time I started the interval, my heart rate climbed during the entire 1 mile. Why? Because I had some degree of recovery in there because there was an interval. And in general, it's hard to see it with this, but in general, my heart rate started just a little bit higher each one of the intervals. Why? Because you're getting more fatigued and that's setting in. But the key thing is, my heart rate never got much above the low 150s, which is actually too low for me for this is a lactate threshold workout. I'd expect at lactate threshold, I'm going to be more like in the low 160s, but the heart rate didn't get there. Why? Because for me, on this day, these conditions, this course, 7 minutes wasn't enough time to get my heart rate all the way up there. Does that mean that I failed and didn't have the right workout? No, because my body is still responding to the effort because heart rate was lagging, it just didn't catch up. So this is an example, whereas if I was trying to go by heart rate, I'd have gone way too fast in the beginning, probably way too fast for the entire thing. Chances are, midway into that mile, I'd have gone, whoa, and then I'd have to kind of peel the pace back. So sometimes with intervals, your heart rate may not always get there. Again, depends upon your fitness, the course, and things like that. So as I said, there's nothing wrong with heart rate training, and if this is coming across them against it, that's not my intent. But what I do want to say, you've got to know what your zones are. I'll link back to the other video. You need to make sure that you understand the other things that might impact your heart rate. But most importantly, understand heart rate is a lagging indicator. Understand how that lag affects you, and then heart rate could be a good tool for you.